Let's see. Can anybody hear? All right, it's 8 o'clock. It's time to get started. We've got a busy calendar this morning, and um, just for everyone's information, we also have a rules meeting at 9 o'clock. And I don't want to keep anybody from the rules committee. I'm going to ask Representative Williamson if he'll open us with prayer. What's your number?
7.
You got your own.
Chairman.
Yep.
Let's pray. Father, thank you for the gift of this day. Father, thank you for the opportunity to serve you. May we do things that are pleasing in your sight as we seek to serve you, serve our families, serve the citizens of the state, and especially those that serve and protect us. These things we ask and pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you, sir. Like I said, we've got a pretty full agenda this morning. First on the calendar will be Representative Blackman to give us House Bill 64. And for a little bit of information, this bill or a version similar to it was passed by the House last session. What was the vote on it? Pretty close to it.
Sir?
What was the vote on this bill last year in the House?
Favorably.
Uh,
It was a favorable vote.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's what I
sure.
thought. So go ahead and make your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, bring before you House Bill 64. That is the Protection and Guarantee for Service of Health Insurance Consumers Act, and what we are doing in response to the ACA is to establish that compensation will be paid to agents in the event that they provide service with respect to health care plans.
You have a substitute there, I believe.
I do have a substitute.
The version that you have is not the substitute. We didn't have time to make copies. Would you go over the changes that were made in the substitute?
Yes, sir. If you'll look at line towards the end, I'm trying to get the differences here. We've added a line 33 and 34, Part C, that says the commissioner shall adopt such rules and regulations he or she deems necessary for the administration of this code section. And then under Section 3, we have added that this act shall be applicable to policies issued or renewed on or after January 1st, 2018. So
Okay.
a start date of January 1, 2018.
Okay,
The
does
rates are filed towards the beginning of the year, so that was a request by the industry.
by the department and the industry? Okay.
By the industry.
Okay, by the industry. Okay. Any questions for Representative Blackman? Number 26. Identify yourself and ask your question, please. You're supposed to be.
You know, I can't really answer that question. I think that has a life of its own, and I think that would evolve independent of what we're trying to do here.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. I guess it's time for the question. Got it moved, do pass. I need a second. Got a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, Representative Taylor. House Bill 74.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today I bring you House Bill 74. This has been requested by the Commissioner's Office. It has to do with the risk-based capitalization. The trend test for life has been revised from 2.5 to 3.0, making it more conservative and consistent with the numbers used in the health and PC insurers. The trend test trigger or moving from 2.5 to 3 will help identify financially troubled companies sooner, and that will help us protect our consumers. A lot of people have looked, why are we doing this? We need to do it now because of the industry trends. This is an accreditation issue, and it's required that we stay in line with other carriers across the country. In order for us to maintain our accreditation, we need to make this change in the 2017 legislative year. I want to say that this is something that will allow the department to maintain our compliance with NAIC. And this accreditation program was established to develop and maintain standards to promote all kinds of efficiencies and insurance company financial solutions when there is insolvency. NAIC accreditation allows states to rely on the accredited domestic regulator to fulfill a baseline of level of effective financial regulatory oversight. It creates substantial efficiencies for insurance regulators who are then able to coordinate and rely on each other's work. All 50 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico are currently accredited.
Okay, got a question, number 13. Oh, okay. Number 7.
Thank you for bringing this legislation, Representative. Isn't it true that risk, by better addressing the risk-based capital, this simply means, in layman's language, we have a higher degree of assurance that claims are going to be paid by whatever the insurance
Yes,
company
that
is?
is the route for this. We need to make sure that the consumers are covered and no one's caught in an insolvency.
Thank you for bringing it.
Thank you.
Okay, that looks like all the questions. I'm ready for the question. Got to move, do pass, second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, like sign. All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Representative Carson, House Bill 92.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is House Bill 92. This is famous last words, very simple bill, but what this basically does, this has 6 words on on line 10 in regard to policies issued by the same insurer. This is basically making an adjustment in the non-renewal statute in Title 33, Section 24. And what this basically does would simply put single-car policies and multi-car policies on the same playing field in regard to non-renewal. And we have checked this, this industry brought this to us. We have checked this language, gone back and forth with the Department of Insurance. It's my understanding they are satisfied with these changes as they're before you right now.
Okay, any questions? Okay, no questions. Ready for a motion? All right, got them do pass, got a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. That one carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Would the Vice Chairman come take over? I got to present a little bill here.
All right, Chairman Smith, I believe you have a bill to present to us, if you would,
I
please.
do. It's House Bill 127. I really think every time we pass a bill, we need to delete something, and that's what this bill is doing. It's deleting Chapter 18 and 19 from the Insurance Code. Chapter 33-18 relating to nonprofit medical services, and Chapter 33-19 relating to nonprofit hospital services are 2, I guess, basically antiquated chapters of the insurance code, and neither have been applied since the 1960s. Chapter 13-18 was the old Blue Cross law. 13-19 applied to Blue Shield. Those 2 entities merged and eventually resulted in Blue Cross Blue Shield of Georgia, which is Chapter 33-20. There have been no entities regulated under these chapters for almost 50 years, so I move that these be, we vote yes on House Bill 127.
You've heard the presentation. Are there any questions? We have a do pass in a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Do pass.
Very good, thank
Back
you
to
all.
Mr. Chair.
All right, now, House Bill 146, Representative Gravely. You have a substitute from the presentation that was made Monday.
Mr. Chairman, may I get a copy of that substitute?
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're on.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is a substitute to House Bill 146, which tried to answer the questions that many of you had from our previous hearing yesterday. And I think we've done a good job with the chairman's help, with the help of GMA and ACCG. What House Bill 146 does is essentially provides insurance coverage for firefighters who have been diagnosed with cancer. Last year's bill, and including the original version of this bill, was a very broad definition of cancer. We took your concerns into consideration, as well as working with the firefighters and looking at 38 other states, which we've previously mentioned, the cancers that they listed. And you'll find, starting on line 22 down through lines 25, I'll read those cancers for those viewers that are tuning in outside of this committee. It says here, starting on line 22, as used in this paragraph, the term cancer means bladder, blood, brain, breast, esophageal, intestinal, kidney, lymphatic, lung, prostate, rectum, respiratory tract, skin, testicular, and thyroid cancer, leukemia, multiple myeloma, and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So we've narrowed and been specific on the types of cancer that one would be eligible for this particular coverage after being diagnosed.
Representative,
Yes, sir.
one other point on that, these also have been identified by the CDC. So it adds some more credibility to where we came up with these.
Yes, sir.
Cancers.
These cancers, Mr. Chairman, you are correct. These cancers are cancers that have been identified by the CDC and other university studies as being the most prevalent cancers among firefighters. So we tried to narrow that scope to be specific in what we were trying to address in House Bill 146. If you go down to line 31, the benefit structure is the same. Upon diagnosis, the firefighter would receive a $25,000 payout upon proof of the diagnosis being submitted to the fire department. At the 6-month term, if the diagnosis appears to be one that is going to permanently disable the firefighter and prohibit the firefighter from being able to carry out his or her duties, that would then trigger a 36 consecutive month payment at 60% salary protection. What we did was we moved that from 42 to 36 months, so it would be an even 3 years on that particular payout. For the volunteers, which we were very mindful that we wanted to make sure we were offering this particular benefit to, because we want to take into consideration Georgia firefighters, 60 to 70% are volunteers in our state, so we wanted to make sure that they were incorporated. The initial lump sum cash payout applies to our volunteers as well. However, because we cannot estimate the volunteer's salary in the private sector, we have gone with a flat benefit. If the 3-year trigger or the 3-year benefit is triggered, that benefit would just be a flat rate of $1,500 for the 3-year time period. This benefit also, I think it should be noted, if the firefighter is receiving any other government payout, or if there is another plan that the government would be subsidizing upon diagnosis, that this would offset. So there wouldn't be, you wouldn't receive the 60% payout from on this particular benefit, as well as another government plan paying on top of that. They would all offset each other to max out at the 60%.
If the firefighter has a private policy that he or she has taken it upon themselves to pay for, that is not affected. The firefighter would be able to utilize that. We're only talking about multiple government-paid payouts for that benefit structure. So the firefighter would be able to capitalize upon that if he or she has had some forethought and been able to purchase a private plan. What we also wanted to do was make sure that if the firefighter retires, they could carry this plan with them, but they would pick up the premiums at that point. So if they wanted to, after retirement, wanted to carry this plan, the premium would be upon them. That premium would be, Mr. Chairman, if I am correct, that would be served as a tax credit for if
That's
the
correct.
firefighter chose to do that.
There'll be a tax credit as long as they continue paying. You know, if they retire at 65 and they live to be 95, and they continue with that plan, they would continue to get a tax credit as long as they pay.
Decided to purchase it on their own
Yes.
after retirement. In line 68, the funds received as premiums for the coverage specific in this paragraph shall not be subject to premium taxes under Chapter 8 of Title 3. In line 70, this is so that the premium taxes that would normally be paid would actually go into the policy to provide for the cancer coverage or any type of payout that would be needed. So I just wanted to make sure that all of you were aware of that. If there's any questions, Mr. Chairman, I will submit to those at this time. If there's anything that if I haven't missed anything.
Okay, we got a couple. Number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Gravely, I appreciate you working on this bill and getting it back to us quickly. Just a question concerning the definition of cancers that are that are going to be covered.
Yes, sir.
What would happen, say, a firefighter, or that the industry now recognizes a new type of cancer that it is now caused by the firefighter's line of duty and related, but we haven't had a chance to update the code to add that in, and a firefighter has the cancer, would they be able to get the coverage that we're trying to allow them in this legislation?
That's a very good question, Representative. We would then have to go back into the code section and add that cancer.
But would it be kind of an ex post facto thing that they would not be covered because their cancer was diagnosed before we added it into the list of coverages?
Yeah, if the cancer was not listed among these cancers here,
Okay.
but we will continue to work with the fire services as we identify down the road cancers that tend to be or are showing to be more prevalent among firefighters and those in the firefighting industry. We would have to add that cancer in.
Because that was just a concern that I think another state that had adopted this type of limiting the definitions, they're having to go back continually and add new cancers back into their legislation to get that covered. And I just want it to be known that, there is a danger there of defining and limiting that some people could end up getting left out when it's discovered that the cancer they have is now considered work-related. So,
Well, one of the things that we did in looking at this particular list of cancers, we pulled up all the various states that had a policy like this that listed or identified particular cancers, and we pulled those that, based on the firefighters and CDC, that identified the most prevalent cancers. But you have to prove that you had the firefighting was caused by that. Coming in contact with those fumes or chemicals and this kind of stuff. But yes, there would be ample opportunity to come back periodically and make adjustments to these things. That's part of what this does.
okay. Thank you.
Absolutely, and being mindful of that, I share your concerns. But I think as long as we keep open dialogue with the firefighters that we've been working with the Standards and Training Council, that we would be able to look at the national data and be able to tell us kind of how these trends are going.
And is it the CDC that defines what is firefighter related, like that they can determine, or is it just that they're saying there's an abnormal amount of firefighters that have these types of cancers? That you understand? Is there an organization that oversees and kind of says, like the medical industry, that says this is absolutely definitively
There is a
Related.
yes. To answer your question, I think the CDC has done a study. Harvard University, Johns Hopkins University, have also done studies looking at the diagnosis rate of firefighters with particular types of cancer. What we do want to make sure is that if we see one that is starting to become more prevalent, that we act fast and add that in as appropriate.
So I guess my question would be, is there a way that you could, instead of listing a definitive list, you could make it flexible that says any cancer that XYZ organization has deemed to be related to the work of a firefighter, that it would be covered under this legislation. And so it would be flexible as they add stuff to it, it's getting added to our list of legislation as well. And I don't know if that's able to be done or not. That's why I'm just asking.
There is it's just been created a national cancer registry for firefighters where they are registering the types of cancers that are coming on board, and that's, Mr. Chairman, we may want to look at that going forward.
Okay.
As parity with that.
Okay. Number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Additional to those questions about the actual cancers, looking at the CDC guidelines, just taking a quick glance at it, a lot of them are included, but there are a few that are omitted, and I was just curious as to why. Those include cervical and stomach. They're written here on the NIOSH, which is the occupational safety group that does this type of work that I think the representative to my left was asking about. So why were those omitted?
Quite frankly, no particular reason. We just went, the cancers that we have listed right here is a breakdown between the models that Idaho and Michigan have listed. And so we tried to incorporate as many as possible that we knew were definitively showing up among firefighters at an alarming rate. But I think that as we move forward, we definitely would be open to making sure that we're not missing any cancers. But there were some that other states didn't have that we have on our list, and there are some that states have that we don't have on our list.
Okay. Number 26.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Cravely, thanks again for bringing this bill. You and I have spoken at different times about the concern of firefighters who might lose their employment upon receiving diagnosis. Do you feel like this adequately addresses that? Is there a concern that firefighters could still lose their employment during this process?
I think there is a concern.
Okay.
Yes.
And is there anything that we can be doing to address that issue, whether in this bill or another?
I think making sure that whatever bill we are able a product that we're able to come out with is something that the firefighters see as value.
Okay.
And that is something that the firefighters can take away and feel like they are being protected once being diagnosed with cancer.
Right.
So whatever product it is, be it this bill or another bill that will be heard in committee this afternoon.
All right. So, because we've said a number of times in the previous committee we had that we hold up our firefighters as heroes. As you and I would run away from the fire, they're running to it. And I certainly would not want to see them lose their employment because they have been willing to take those risks. So,
absolutely.
Thank you again.
And I might add, there is this mechanism provides for once the firefighter is diagnosed, the lump sum payout will be immediate. They will go through a 6-month process of whether it be testing, if there are any surgical needs, the reevaluation will happen. We may find that a firefighter is able to come back, like many who have been testifying in committees previous or have been working with us on this bill, that may be able to come back within 8-9 months, within a year. Firefighters want to come back. This is a calling, as it is across the board for all public safety personnel. They're not looking for a handout. They're not looking for anything to game the system. They want to be fighting fires. That's what their life calling is doing, or is. And we want to make sure that should something happen during their career, that we're taking adequate care of them and making sure that we can come up with the best possible product for them to know that we are mindful of their sacrifice and mindful of their performance.
Number 29.
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Representative Gravely, also for this. I know you put a lot of work into it and appreciate what you've done here. I just, real quick, and you'll have to forgive this question, I'm not in the insurance business, but is kind of a self-insured model been considered at all here?
Representative Blackman, you'll have to forgive me as well. I'm not in the insurance business. so
Well,
I'm-
just like self-insurance as opposed to, as a group versus purchasing this through.
I think we're looking at the size of, as the carriers that have been working with us on this are looking at the pool. The greater, it's like any type of group plan. The larger the pool, the better rate we're going to be able to get as we get this policy. So like I said, there's probably some individual firefighters who have gone out and purchased individual plans.
Right.
But we can't, what we don't want to do is mandate to an individual that they have to go out and buy a particular policy. I think that's proven not to have worked.
Sure, no, I understand that, and it would not preclude, the municipality, like is listed here, from putting that premium up. It just would be, it's just something that crossed my mind.
Yeah,
I was
and
curious
I
about.
apologize. That's something, maybe the chairman may be able to answer that, or maybe.
May not even apply, but thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
for the question.
Okay, number 12.
Thank you, Representative Gravely. Hi, over here. Thank you for bringing this issue up. I think it's very important. I do not think it's sustainable to ask people to continue to volunteer to do firefighting or sign up for this job if we are not going to take care of them in the case of them receiving cancer from doing the position. So I appreciate you bringing this up. I just have one concern, similar to Representative Cannon's, about cervical cancer not being listed. And I do have an insurance license, and so in conjunction with that question, earlier this week you told us that carrier said that it would be more cost-effective for the policies if we did not specifically list the different types of cancers and if you just left it open. So why did you decide to go through and list? I mean, because that's a big concern.
It is, yes.
That-
Just to follow other state models. The question has been asked on several occasions. We're listing all cancers. And I think even through the previous committee's questioning, the cancers that are maybe not even related to firefighting. And so we wanted to be diligent in making sure we were bringing a product forward that we were able to look at other states, what other states had come forward with, and also what tend to be the cancers that firefighters are being diagnosed with. And so that's why we wanted to tighten the bill, quite frankly, to tighten the bill up.
Well, I do think it sort of leaves an opening where some folks will not be covered, as we mentioned before, in the case of cervical cancer. So that is definitely a concern.
I appreciate your concern very much.
Okay, number 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would like to thank you for this bill and for the changes and things you've addressed in it. I will bring some clarity. I'm very happy with the 36 months because those that asked about health insurance, after 24 months of disability, federal government Medicare steps up and it would become effective. It doesn't usually take only 24 months, so the 36 months gives plenty of time for a disabled person to have health care under the Medicare Disability Act, which is, I think you matched it very, very well. And under Section 2, you talked about the ability to make that self-insurance available, and they talk about a group funding to make that happen. And my question really is directed at that, which I think this is a good place for this to be, and it would become some type of it allows it, I guess, through this legislation. But my question was, who will be managing that fund? And I want to make sure that the DNR firefighters are included. And would it be funded by a firefighters group? I know everybody will be pitching in the money, but who will manage it? And at this point, I guess it's just allowing it to happen. This is just the vehicle that would be used to
Yes.
manage it. And I just wondered if we had decided that, or that will be determined at a later date.
I think they'll be managed by, if you go up to line 73,
Okay.
the Georgia Firefighter Standards and Training Council shall be authorized to adopt rules, regulations reasonable and necessary to implement provisions of this code.
Okay.
They already currently operate in the captive.
And so this is where it will go, in there?
Yes.
Thank you. I didn't see that they would be the one to manage the fund, and that's great. Again, thank you for bringing this. I think it brings a lot of clarity to it. And I did a little research on the diagnoses, and I think part of this determination, it appears to be those diseases that have been directly related to firefighters. And you don't see many firemen that have ovarian or cervical cancer from it, because normally it's something that comes in through the lungs, through your skin, but I think that's where those particular ones came in from what my research showed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. Number 18.
Carolyn Hughley, House District 136. I wanted to echo the concerns of the ladies in the room,
Yes, ma'am.
because there are female firefighters, and my stepdaughter is a female firefighter, and I think that we need to make sure that we're taking care of women. The research is not going to reflect what happens to women, because women have not been firefighters as long as men. And so we need to be cognizant of that as we move forward. And that's why the ladies are talking about cervical cancer, because, we don't have as many female firefighters that have been in the business 30 years or whatever to be reflected in the research going forward. So that is a valid concern.
Absolutely.
My other concern is that we need to put something in this bill that would automatically require us to come back and take a look at it. A certain interval where we would have to come back and look at it and do the updates and that kind of thing, because we don't know who's going to be sitting in these chairs the next term. And if that is our intent, that it's an ongoing thing, I think we should consider putting something in the legislation that would require future legislatures to come back and revisit this.
Are you referencing, say, every 5 years, 10? What kind of,
Whatever the committee deems reasonable, but every 3, every 5, some type of interval that we can come back and take a look at this, particularly if we're not going to include cervical cancer at this time, then maybe the research will catch up with what is actually happening to ladies.
Absolutely. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, 2 of the states that we were looking at did not contain breast cancer as a diagnosis. I think if you would speak to some of the firefighters, that we are seeing in some of the female firefighters diagnosis of breast cancer at an earlier stage in the firefighter's career, and particularly women who are firefighters that have had no prior cancer in their family are being diagnosed. So we did want to be mindful of, since we do have data on breast cancer at this point, making sure that we were able to add that in at this point. But I appreciate your comments and your concerns. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna make an executive decision. I think we need to add cervical cancer
Yes,
into
sir.
this list. If Legislative Council would add cervical cancer to this list, we'll go with that. Okay, number 19.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Gravely, for being here, and everybody for being here today. I'm still a little confused. One of the questions we asked about who's going to be, I guess, running the plan. So is the Georgia Firefighter Standard and Training Council going to manage and direct the self-funded insurance plan on this? I know the other day when we had talked, they were looking at coming up with, the gentleman that was here talked about, developing their own, I guess, insurance company, or I know there's a lot of entities out here that have self-funded workers' comp plans and different things. I know I served on the Georgia School Board's workers' comp plan years ago when I was on the school board that was self-funded, because workers' comp had gone away in the 90s, I think.
Yes, sir.
And they developed that. So is this what we're looking at? The Georgia Firefighter Standards is going to develop their own, like, insurance agency that they're going to have to handle the claims and everything through that, or to be outsourced? Do you know how that's going to work?
I would, if I may, Mr. Chairman, defer to your wisdom on that particular question.
It may be either way. It depends on the contract that they can, if some company wants to provide the policy, or they can do it. You know, it'll be developed through rules and regulations on how they want to do it.
Okay. And if I can, now, I know in line 64 through 67, it's still going down the county governing authorities, municipal governing authorities are gonna pay for it out of county taxes and city taxes. So GMA and ACCG's all right with this, because this is gonna be an unfunded mandate sent down to our cities and counties. And I know from being previous local experience, that's a hot button issue sometimes, but they're still on board with this, I take it.
Without speaking for them, they have been involved at the table. To my knowledge and what they have expressed to us thus far, they are working diligently in helping us craft this to the product that we've gotten here today. And without, again, speaking for them, they seem to be 100% on board with the product we have and moving forward, as long as we're able to continue talking about potential negotiations going forward.
Thank you, sir.
And in response to ACCG and GMA, they have been active players in developing this language, even to the point GMA was in my office this morning at about 6 o'clock, going through this. So if GMA, would you like just to comment, just to be sure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Tom Gale with the Georgia Municipal Association, and just to help address that question from Chairman Maxwell. It's anticipated that some of the local governments will self-insure, some of the local governments will go out to the private marketplace and try to get coverage, and some of the local governments will work through the county interlocal risk management authority or the city interlocal risk management authority. Section 2 is changing the statutory authority of those two programs that are run through GMA and ACCG on behalf of the cities and counties. And I think it's important to note that both of those governmental interlocal risk management authorities have been up and running for many, many years, providing insurance, life and health insurance, providing general liability insurance, motor vehicle liability insurance, property damage, et cetera. So these aren't brand new systems or ideas. These are very successful risk management agencies that are managed to minimize the risk to local governments and help them with the liability if they incur it. So Section 2 is another contemplated route to pay for these conduit to pay for these claims.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rules, Chairman. As a process or procedure, can we add cervical cancer to this bill once it gets to rules? No? Okay. All right. Well, we'll add it here.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I've just been informed that we can produce a study that was done in Miami with the Miami Fire Department that showed female firefighters were increase of 50% of cervical cancer.
Okay. Well, we'll just have to make do, and we'll add it here once we get finished with the questions. And we've got just a couple more left. Number 16.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that Mr. Gale from GMA answered my questions. I was just, I know that by adding the accident and disability to the current interlocal sections, will be good. But as long as he referenced that the private marketplace could also participate, so I think he answered my question.
Okay, thank you, sir. Number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Bruce Williamson from Walton County, and thank you to my seatmate for 4 years. As I've seen your single-minded focus on this legislation, I do applaud you for your heroic efforts in bringing this much-needed resolution to the perils that are facing our firefighting community. That being said, it's all about getting the benefits to the firefighters.
Yes, sir.
And what I'm wondering about is, we have to have rate adequacy, especially if it moves towards a self-insurance model. So was there any consideration given in adopting the rules and regulations that might give them a little bit of flexibility, specifically on when the coverage begins? We have a 6-month waiting period. You're proposing this legislation for the volunteer firefighters. But again, let's imagine that the firefighters are managing their own self-insured pool for their benefit. Would they necessarily, wouldn't they need the flexibility to maybe adjust the waiting period before the coverage began, under the theory that the first day firefighter is not, if they come up with the cancer's diagnosis the first week, it's impossible for them to develop that condition from fighting fires.
Absolutely.
So my question is, was there any consideration of giving some flexibility in the rules and regulations for them to make adjustments, such as a waiting period time?
Dealing with the specific 6
Dealing
months.
for when the coverage begins
Begins.
for a new firefighter.
Yes, it's my understanding that there was a 90-day waiting period that was discussed. There was a 12-month waiting period, but the 6-month was implemented due to the fact that some of the firefighters had short-term disability, and that would not preclude them from being able to use the already available short-term disability before that, if it was determined that it would be a career-ending diagnosis, that they could use that, and then at the 6-month period be able to pick up where that disability particular program would end.
Follow-up question?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So what I'm trying to get back to is that, as I read this legislation,
Yes, sir.
coverage would be, let's assume this is a self-insured pool funded for the benefit of the firefighters. And day one, the new hire, day two, happens to have a
There's a
checkup.
12-month waiting period.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I keep looking for.
Yeah.
So there is a 12-month
you have to
waiting
be
period.
a firefighter for a consecutive 12 months with the
I'm
department.
sorry, that's my
Before
question.
you would even be eligible for this particular
Thank
package.
you for clarifying
Yeah,
that.
line
I thought-
28.
Excuse me.
It's okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
Well, I don't see any other questions. Are you through, Mr. Williamson?
Yes, sir. Appropriate time, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a
Okay.
motion.
Well, we have an amendment to add cervical cancer to the list of cancers that we have in the bill. Do I hear a motion that we approve cervical cancer? Any opposed? All in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. Okay, now, we've got House Bill 146, 6652S, substitute as amended with cervical cancer. Yes, Mr. Meadows, what's your number? 11. Go ahead.
11.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make a statement a little bit, try to clear up on pools and self-insurance and fully insured. Y'all, the cold hard facts are out here, smaller communities and counties cannot self-insure this. There is not enough premium that will go towards that. They're gonna have to be fully insured, or they're gonna have to get with ACCG or GMA and do a statewide thing. Their premiums will be lower, and there will be a pool of money to pay from. If you're self-funded, you pay the claims. You pay the claims out of your money, Mr. County, Mr. City. A lot of cities can't create that. Therefore, they're gonna have to be either fully insured, that means they're just getting a policy issued by an insurance company, the county or city will go in that, and we've got some awfully good companies that sell, that sell cancer insurance, and we've got some awfully good companies that sell disability insurance. They can be the guide, they can put the counties can get bids from them, and they can buy it. I would recommend that they all go to GMA and ACCG and get involved in the pools that they've already got created. There's money to pay the claims. Example, you're self-insured, you're a small company, a small county. The first thing you get hit up with is a $25,000 payout. They ain't got that in their pool. They're gonna have to have the help of somebody else, or write their policies up that are gonna be fully insured to pay out that. And I think this lady back here knows more about self-funded than all of us put together. And she would probably agree with just what I said.
Regardless of what you said, she'd agree with it.
I'm trying to alleviate, I would be trying to alleviate some of the current concern that some of my smaller communities might have on the expense of this thing. I have found in my 38 years of doing this that there's some good products out there. And if that small company doesn't want to be involved with ACCG, or a small community doesn't want to be involved with ACCG or GMA, they have, that's the only other route they have. I won't say they have, but that's their route. But again, I don't want everybody to get, there's a pool of money you gotta pay from. You got, and law of large numbers jumps in here. The more of you that are paying in, the better we will be able to pay those claims.
That's exactly right, and he knows what he's talking about. We discussed this in some detail because you've got counties like Montgomery County that maybe have 5,000 people. They don't have this kind of pool, so this is I think it's a pretty good mechanism to go through. So we've got cervical cancer added as an amendment. So now I'm waiting on a motion to pass 146 substitute as amended, and I have a recommended do pass. Since got a second, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Well, thank y'all. Y'all have a great day, and we'll see you
Thank you,
in
Mr.
rules
Chairman.
in a few minutes. Thank you.